Today, Election Day 2014, we are having, appropriately enough, a webinar topic on civic tech. That's the use of technology to engage with government. Civic tech is a movement of people in dialogue with their governments and each other to solve complex social problems. As technology tools have become more advanced and social media more accepted, more civic tech companies have appeared and are flourishing. So today we're going to have an online webinar with our panel for a panel discussion of our founders of some of the up-and-coming new companies that are focusing on this important new technology sector. Before I introduce our panelists and we jump right into the topic, I want to remind the listeners that this webinar is being recorded. You'll be able to access this webinar and the slides on our site, royseuniversity.com, as well as on the Royse Law YouTube site. It'll be available for download as a podcast in the Apple Store, and finally, some of the slides will be posted on SlideShare. If you have questions during the webinar, notice that there's a dialog box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Type your question, and our panelists will answer questions at the end of the presentations. And if we don't get to your questions, somebody will get back to you by email. If you're tweeting today, you can tweet to #CivicTech. So we have 4 panelists here today from 4 companies. First is Areti Kampyli, from the founder and president of Cliqstart. She's got 10 years of advertising and business development experience. She founded Yasmo in the UK in 2009 and turned it profitable in less than 2 years. She's a former advertising manager at Ogilvy and Mather and has an MSc in Media and Communications from London School of Economics. Cliqstart is a grassroots activism app where passionate people join forces with activist groups and politicians to fix political and social issues. Rani Yadav-Ranjan is a recognized expert in innovation and entrepreneurship and creates transformative effects on investments in scientific and technical innovations that have on job creation and regional prosperity. She has been the chair of the Small Business Subcommittee of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group's Economic Development Committee and currently is the founder of 4PIA Inc., People in Action. It's a data learning, big data analytics, and visualization company focused on the political space. She also was the co-founder of the award-winning University of California, Berkeley Citrus Mobile App Challenge and University of California, Merced Mobile App Challenge. Bart Myers is the founder and CEO of Countable, which is a platform that makes government easy and empowers voters with knowledge and tools necessary to directly influence policy and keep track of their congressional representatives. And finally, we're also joined by Andrew Moriarty from Forward US, or FWD US, which mobilizes the tech community in support of policies that keep the American dream achievable in the 21st century, starting with comprehensive immigration reform. So our format today is I'm going to ask our panelists to maybe give us a short presentation, an introduction as to who they are, what their companies do, and what they do in this field of civic tech. And after their short introductions and presentations, we'll go right into questions. So if you have questions, make sure that you post them in the dialog box on your screen. And with that, I believe that we will start with Areti from Cliqstart.
Hello, Areti. Thank you very much. So the problem that our company's mission is to solve is the very fact that activism, yes, is mentioned today, but our political engagement really goes beyond any share, tweet, or like. Now, it's very, very weird because the kayaks and the eBays of this world have managed to revolutionize their industries, retail, traveling, etc., through bringing social and shared experiences among people into the game. Now, politics itself, they are all about community building, shared experiences. However, exactly this sector, we haven't managed to crack that nut with technology yet. So with Cliqstart, what we're trying to do is we want to make people keep on taking action until the mission of their cause is really achieved. So what we are is, as Roger said, a grassroots activism app where passionate people join forces with activist groups and politicians to fix political and social issues. How? Through concrete action. And let's see more or less how it works. An advocacy group, a politician, a political action committee, or a trade union creates their community on our platform. They share that community with the whole database and social media followers. And then the important thing is that they can create the actions, the challenges that they want their supporters to complete towards the achievement of their mission on our platform. Those challenges can be anything from canvassing neighborhoods to messaging politicians on a specific issue, to even going to, say, Nancy Pelosi's rally and ask her openly about immigration, let's say. So the community leaders are able to push those challenges through push notifications to mobile, and of course disseminate any kind of messages that they want, again through push. The important thing is that they can chat and form groups with the members of the community, and on top of that, the communities themselves, they can form coalition and organize themselves to be more effective with this joint action. Now, the end users entering the app, they choose the issues that they're passionate about and they want to fight for, and they join those relevant communities. Now, again, they're able to chat one-on-one and in groups with the community leaders and amongst themselves with other members. And as we said, they're able to complete real-world actions and challenges to compete for a place on the leaderboard, which is an incentivizing attribute. And of course, they're able to donate to these communities and show the real power of grassroots contribution. What we're achieving here with those features is the fact that we get people to engage with others and organize themselves as a community through three things that we're offering to them. First of all, they have a real sense of community. They feel a satisfaction that they're part of a movement and they fight together towards a common cause. Secondly, they get instant gratification from seeing the results of their actions in the real world. And thirdly, we bring a very healthy, yet quite addictive, competitive attribute, which is that everyone competes to become more and more of a valued member of that community by completing more and more actions and challenges, which really brings the community, the group, to achieve more effectively their goal and mission. So in today's competitive environment, our differentiators and competitive advantages are, first of all, the fact that we're all about long-term commitment. We're all about community building rather than one-off projects that don't contribute to the bigger goal. Secondly, we bring all political actors that engage together to solve a specific issue under one platform, the politicians, the activist groups, the people, and we enable them to chat and form coalitions so that with that joint action they can really achieve their goal. In this particular scenario, we don't see the politicians as targets, the typical us versus them, but as partners to really solve the issue that we're about to try to solve. And thirdly, we gamify everything. We get people to be more and more engaged by giving them bite-sized actions, unlocking achievements that they complete for points. And the most important thing is that the community leaders and the people themselves define what these actions are going to be. And they're, of course, beyond likes and shares, etc. So these are a few of our customers, amongst which Rokana, right there in Silicon Valley, Peter Quo, and Forward US. These are the most prominent ones, and you'll see, for Andrew will talk about Forward US in a bit. They are Mark Zuckerberg's advocacy group on immigration, and they're definitely the pioneers in using technology for advocacy. So with the existing technology that we have today, it's very difficult to organize people in a community to act on exactly the issues that they want to solve. So with Cliqstart, we get people to coalesce, to form coalitions, to come together, and have this kind of shared experiences and aspirations to bring real results. So ultimately what we're trying to do is get real world actions to speak louder than online likes. Thank you very much.
Okay, well thank you, Areti. It's really interesting. It looks like you've already signed up quite a few of the people that are running in this election today.
Yes, indeed.
Congratulations. Okay, and with that, I think we'll turn it over to Rani from 4PA.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the word PIA actually has a double meaning. In Hindi, it means something you love or something that you have deep affection for. And then, of course, we had to find another word, and we decided, well, the best one that somebody gave us was people in action. So why is there a need for a company like a 4PA? Well, a few things are happening in the world today that are forcing tech to solve the wild west of government reform and creating civic tech, actually. One of the things is that there's so much voter apathy. There's such a discourse between what people are saying and what the elected officials are hearing. And more important than that, there is a urgent need that business rules can apply to how government really functions. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's talk about how people get engaged and what they mean. One of the things elected officials do are send messages out. They need to understand how the analytics are. Now, as business leaders, everybody understands that without sound data behind it, it's really hard to start shooting in the dark and think you're going to win your target base the way you wanted to. Yet that is exactly what members of Congress do all the time with legislation and different comments that they make. It is a shot in the dark. You cannot, for example, we live here in California, and we are a robust state of 36 or so million people. Well, that means that our two senators represent 18 million people apiece. There is no way, even in the divine space of time, that you could have a representation of 18 million people and think you can actually reflect that. So what do? Well, one thing that we realized is people are becoming more sophisticated. These people also want to understand. And when I mean people, I mean on both sides. I mean the Republican side, the Democratic side, the people, the businesses, all the constituents. They need to have a representation happen. So how do you do that? Well, advocacy is great, but that's fine. When you look at the slide today and you're looking at the trending of what the social media messages of members of Congress are, it helps narrow the viewpoint. What is your concern? What is your concern, and what are you looking at? So how do we get people engaged? Well, you know, we ask them to become an influencer. So we ask you to simply vote up or down on the message that you have here. And so why do we need that? Well, people want to be informed. Everybody has a role. What can you do when you're trying to play in a global world? So I was lucky enough to chat with Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. And she had the best quote, which I had to share with everybody, of course. And her quote to me was, as I was describing what 4PA did, not only for her, but also for people who wanted to engage, and that is that, you know, we live and people work in the 21st century technology. That's how you talk to members of Congress. But government is listening on a 20th century technology. And then they're nice enough to respond to you using 19th century technology because they write you a nice little letter. And this is why we need a company like a 4PA. But I think I could expand it between all my brethren here on the table and say they need technology to help solve the government problems. And what really is the best way to do that? Well, for us, in our solution, really has been create the influencers, show the responsible tweeting, show also valuable information on members. Somebody pointed out to me that today, being Tuesday, we show how much campaign money they have raised. Well, this is the transparency that's important, but our data is also built on reaching out and creating focal groups between millennials, you know, folks in their 60s, folks in their 90s, who is impacted by every decision these people make. Nobody here does not realize or think that these 537 people do not create most of the issues that are happening on the planet, and also impact them. We are problem solvers and we're problem creators. As people, as government representatives, we need access to those people to show how we feel. So how can we do that? How can we create that change? So using tech to make government more effective, we're actually going after also the lobbying market. So now, on an instant basis, when you want people to hear how you feel, your elected officials, you vote up or down. We let them know twice a day how you are doing. On the split end, they can then view up and say, how am I really trending? What are my constituents thinking? But more importantly, how is America thinking? One of the other things that we realized fairly early on, that you need to connect. They need to see your eyes. John Donahue, the CEO of eBay, recently said to me, the reason people can't get in front of elected officials is because they can't take off time or pay the $150 or $200 to get in front of them. And well, that's a really thing. So what we set up is, you're right, but for 10 seconds and paying $10, you can leave a personal video to your member of Congress with your issue. And how powerful is that to get an instant emotional impact on the issue? You're engaging in building a one-on-one connection with your elected official. And alternatively, they are doing it with you. They see you, they hear your words, and you get gratification. So what we've been doing is working with a few folks, testing out the system on all ends. Of course, individuals. We've got about 125,000 people right now that are influencers, and that army is growing across the United States and actually globally. But some of the partners that we're working with are IP Extreme, the University of California, who needs to get access to members of Congress. We recently started working with the city of San Jose to leave messages and also to give analytic information to their members of Congress. So one thing that really came out in the press just a couple of days ago was an article that I thought was so funny that I had to share, which is where Scorpia was actually compared in line with Google and Twitter. While we are very proud and excited to have that comparison, it's also very daunting and puts the burden on our shoulders for my executive team and I to build a product that is indeed delivering everything that the world assumes we can do, which we're working very hard to do. So we're very excited about that. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to Roger Royse for hosting this on Election Day, and I hope everybody votes.
Okay, thank you, Rani. It's really interesting where this technology is going. So we're going to move now to Bart Myers, the CEO of Countable, to tell us a little bit about who you are and what your company does.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. Thank you all for joining. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you fine, Bart.
Great. It's nice to be here. My name is Bart Myers. I'm the CEO and one of the two founders of Countable. Countable is a website and now iPhone and Android app where you can quickly get a summary of upcoming legislation before Congress. Summaries are written by our team here to be short, descriptive, engaging, and give you really all the facts you need to be able to then vote yay or nay on legislation and tell your representatives how you think they should vote on legislation. That vote, as it is then sent to the representative in the form of a electronic correspondence through their current systems for handling legislation so that they can then easily respond to you and tabulate or count your perspective and your vote on that issue. We then take it one step further and we give you updates regarding what happens with that legislation after a vote happens in Congress. How did your rep do? Did they listen to you or not? Did they conform with your viewpoint? And that in turn becomes another opportunity for you to essentially tell them how you feel. You can go out to social media or you can directly communicate with them and tell them that you're pleased or displeased that they listened or didn't listen to your feedback. This is just sort of the beginning really of the vision of Countable. Countable ultimately will be taking this same format beyond federal legislation to state and local legislation in the coming months. Using the same platform and approach that has worked really quite well so far. To date, we've now sent over 500,000 messages. Do we have an issue with our audio? Nope. Today we've now sent over 500,000 messages to Congress, and we're only a couple of months old. We actually launched the iPhone app product in July. And fundamentally what we're trying to do is make it so that we remove as many barriers as possible from engaging in and assessing how government is working, how your representatives are doing representing you. And we feel that by doing that, by taking the information, the legislation, and making it very, are we having issues? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hear you fine, Bart.
Okay, I'm seeing a webcam issue here, but it appears that everything's fine. So our objective is to try to make the base information so easy and simple, and to the point where it's on your phone. It gets pushed to you through a notification that you can't be lazy. You have to act. You have to engage. To that end, and in advance of this election, we've created something of a quiz that you can take, where you would vote on 15 pieces of legislation that have had up-down votes in the Congress, where your representatives have, by and large, voted on this legislation. It's all key, marquee pieces of legislation. A vote on everything from a bill about abortion to the environment, to a couple of spending bills, to the Affordable Care Act. And so by going down this list and voting yourself without knowing how your representative voted, we then give you, really for the first time, a direct, precise breakdown of you versus your representative. So I encourage you to check it out at countable.us. It's called the Compatibility Quiz. You may have already cast your vote. Hurrah, well done. But if you haven't, and even if you have, check it out and see how well you match your representatives on key issues. And that's what we're up to.
Okay, well, thank you, Bart. And finally, Andrew Moriarty from Forward.us.
Awesome, thank you. Really happy to be here with you guys today. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the regional organizers for Forward.us. Forward is a nonprofit political advocacy group, and our mission is to keep the American dream achievable and inclusive in the 21st century. And we do that, we start by doing that by passing comprehensive immigration reform. And our approach to passing comprehensive immigration reform is mobilizing the tech community to get involved in advocacy, much like the other presenters have already talked about, and also using the tech community's innovations to change and upgrade and progress the advocacy process. Again, just like a lot of the civic tech tools that we're talking about here. Just to give you a really quick background on Forward and our involvement in the fight for immigration reform, we were launched about 1.5 years ago in April. Our founder is Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, and we have a number of other key tech entrepreneurs who came on board to found that group. You can see some of them up here. And this all started when Mark realized that we have a very strange immigration system for a country built by immigrants and founded by immigrants, and that we had a tech community, not just tech companies, but everyone in the tech community that wasn't getting as politically active as they could. And so the idea was to create this space outside of companies and outside of lobbying where employees and affiliates and members of the tech community can get involved in really pushing for big reforms, comprehensive reforms, ones that matter to us as a country, not just to our businesses. And so the way we would do this is by tapping into some of that potential in the tech community and really using their ideas, their innovative thinking, their passion to reinvent the advocacy process. And it all rests on this idea that as the tech community continues to shape our economy, continues to shape our society, we also have a responsibility to take a hand in making sure we're going in the right direction and making sure that we're working together to make sure that we're making responsible changes and that we're protecting the people that we're working for. So to talk a little bit about how we do that, since we're talking about civic tech, I thought I would talk a little bit about some of our tools that we use to try to innovate the advocacy process. The first one is called Push for Reform. Push for Reform is a really cool tool that acts as sort of like a scorecard for legislators. You can plug in your zip code, we can find your representative, and we'll show you how they stand on key issues like immigration reform. We have a nice, easy kind of table that shows you how they stood on different issues. This is an especially cool tool for us because it was built by some dreamers who are the children of undocumented people who came to this country very young, and some dreamers that came together at a hackathon and built this tool. And so it's kind of the perfect nexus of the entire immigration debate of where tech and immigration intersect. And they built this for us. And it's a great way, especially today, if you're going out to vote, of going to check where your representative stands on a key issue like immigration reform. And we've also worked with some of the groups, even here today, like with Cliqstart, to help power some of the tools that they use. The other cool thing about Push for Reform is once you've learned about where your representative stands, you can use the tool to communicate with them. So you can click a button and write a letter that we will print out and mail to them. Just like Rani was saying, sometimes these representatives are listening in older ways than newer ones, and so we try to translate some of that. You can tweet to them, you can share a Facebook post, things like that. Selfies for Reform is kind of a tool like this for the younger crowd. Rani made the point earlier talking about Forpia that sometimes you need to establish this personal connection with a representative, and Selfies allows you to do that. You can take your picture through the app, which is on iOS and on Android. We'll print them out as postcards and mail them to the representative, accompanied by your message pushing for reform. And we have a really cool gallery online with some of those selfies also. And then our third tool is called Built by Immigrants. Built by Immigrants is a story-sharing platform where immigrants who work in the tech community, who have founded companies, who work at some of these big-name companies, can share their stories about coming to the U.S., can talk about their going through the visa process, going through the immigration process, and talk about all of the things that they've done since joining us here, the companies they've founded, the jobs they've created, the families they've built. And by sharing these stories on the site, you can go on there, you can find a story, you can share it with a representative, you can share it with friends, you can mobilize people around these really compelling narratives that help us understand who immigrants are and how they influence our economy, our society, our communities, and our country. And then we have this other tool, which is we just put out today. It's just like a really quick hack thing, but it's for everyone who comes to our site anyway. We have we're pulling from Google some of this voting information and really trying to push people to go out and find their polling place and vote. So if you're listening and you haven't done that yet, find anyone who does it, but find your information and go out and check that out. And so the final piece of what we do, so we have some really great tech. We have some really cool tools that can help people do advocacy in new ways. I think an important kind of final piece to this whole civic tech discussion is to not forget that so much of this happens in communities. It happens when people come together and use their tools as a community of advocates. One of the ways that we try to promote this is with a chapter program. So in Silicon Valley and San Francisco and Texas and New York, across the country, members of Forward meet in chapters and develop tools, develop campaigns, and find new ways to push for important reforms. And so we have different project teams based on what people like to work on. For really politically active people, we have the Democracy Project. For people that want to build civic tech tools and use tools like Cliqstart and Forpia and Countable to push for reform, we have the 2.0 Project. And we have our Educational Co-Founders Project, too. And we have, this is a really quickly hacked together slide, but if you're in the Silicon Valley area, we're having an event on November 19th, a membership event for people to come together and join one of these projects and work with even some of the teams that you've heard from today about how we can take these great tools and put them to work in person in our communities, really pushing for important reforms. And so I think it's an important complement to everything that we've talked about today. And that's it for Forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Fascinating. You know, as I look at these slides and these presentations, I'm struck by something that Rani said, that I guess the landscape is characterized by voter apathy right now. And I'm wondering, would you say that these sorts of tools are really addressing that problem, and are people more engaged because of it? And are we seeing, because it's easier now to engage with the political process, you just have to go online, that we're actually increasing participation? And if so, is it only among the millennials, or is this something that you think is a wider demographic? So let me just throw that out to our panel and see who wants to. Go ahead, Rani, you start.
So all of us, you know, when you do a startup, it is because there is a really big problem that you're trying to solve, and everybody has to have different approaches to a problem solving. Some of us, I'm going to take your question in pieces. You know, voter apathy is one component of a problem we're all trying to solve, and our approaches are different. what I see today's environment is what's the beauty of America, really, in which is we're diverse. We have different approaches, but we have the same desire. And the desire today is that everybody needs to participate in the electoral process. All constituents, you know, people want to be able to eat and vote anymore. We're just not hungry enough, you know, we're getting hungry. The second part of your question, and I'm going to leave it for my colleagues here, but I'm just going to take a stab at it, and that is, I don't think it's just millennials. I think it's everybody. I know my mom, who is 75, loves her iPad. Shout out to iPad. But, you know, tweets and stuff all the time about why things are wrong. But the beauty of technology has made us a flat platform. So what she's impacting is actually, because I'm from Indian descent, she's trying to impact the discussions happening in India. So, you know, she gets angry with her elected officials in Minnesota, and she gets angry with the people, and she can, thanks to technology, try to communicate and impact both. So I'm going to leave it to what you're doing. I think it's something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've seen is that, yes, all these tools, change.org with petitions, all this, you know, tweeting and all of that, it creates amazing awareness. It raises awareness to an extent that we wouldn't have been able to even go close to in the past, right? However, the very fact that we have these tools has become very much of a war of numbers. Okay, how many clicks did you get? How many shares did you get? How many likes? Fine, you know, what did that bring towards the accomplishment of the mission of that group in our real world, right? That's why we brought the example of like Bring Our Girls Back campaign. Millions of petitions signed, hundreds of thousands of likes, and no one cared from what? May up until now that the subject was reopened, right? Please go ahead.
And I was going to say, and also, but I mean, what we've noticed on Forfias that every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Bring Back Our Girls is the biggest trending that's happening now. That is what members do. I hate to and shout out the lone member out there that is keeping this alive. But you need collaboration. It's not enough that she's the one who's always leading it. And we're the ones showcasing, like, this is all she talks about on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yeah. But you need a community, exactly, you know, that pulls together. And, you know, at the end of the day, some of us are going to get together and we're going to become one super company. Maybe it'll be three of us. But it's going to happen, as with any other industry, as change is first identified. The pain is then realized, and then you go ahead and you actually take the jigsaw, I call it a jigsaw piece of startups. You know, I do this really well, you do this really well, and the next thing you know, you've got this beautiful landscape that is solving all our problems, whether it's join forces. I mean, it's join forces for a cause. It's raise money for a cause. But at the end of the day, all of us, our cause is that we want to matter. Yeah. I want my one vote I did today, my British English just came out, to matter. Right? That's what everyone, that's what you want.
I think for me, like, one of my big realizations kind of as a young adult was this realization that like, taking part in democracy doesn't end when you vote in the general election every 4 years. So you can vote for your president, but there is this kind of taking part that happens every day. And I think that the more we can encourage people to write to a representative who represents their district, who will write a letter back to them, or to get that meeting, go to that rally, speak to those people. I think that one of the great things that tools like this do is that they lower the barrier to entry for people communicating with elected officials. And I think that, you know, voting on election day is kind of the cornerstone of taking part in democracy. It's that first step. I think one of the things that we can encourage the most is sort of sustained engagement, continued advocacy. Everyone has those issues that really move them. And, you know, the more that we can build up that sustained advocacy, we can continue to channel those voices beyond just election day, the more our representatives hear from us. I think that, you know, they are listening. We know they're listening. It's just that certain voices get motivated to speak more than others, and we want to encourage people to really to step up and do that.
So following up on that, does it matter? Are they listening? I hear what you're saying about the, I guess, the constituent side of this, but so far, have you seen that the elected officials and government have been paying attention to this technology and it's actually been making a difference? Are they listening? to your technologies?
They are listening, and Senator Baggage from Alaska said to us that it takes them 4 days to get a poll done of anything because they go with landlines. So they're using, who do you solicit out to? Whereas with what we're doing, it's a matter of nightly. You want to put on there. I can guarantee you that everybody today at this who's participating in a leadership role today, I mean the 4 of us, if we put out a question like, would you give $500 million to Silicon Valley to do a startup incubator in civic tech? If you put it out there, you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff coming down, right? But if you put out there today, like I heard a shocking stat, that in 1994, 70% of eligible registered Californians voted. Mm-hmm. If you put that out, you might, what do you think? Yeah, 10%? I mean, what are you going to get? How many likes would I get, right? So if that was a member of Congress, I'm going to try to be as diverse or as out there as I probably can without ever trying to talk about, do roads in Palo Alto need to be paved? And the answer is yes. Right? Do I want to put money on it? Yes. Barbara Boxer sits on infrastructure. Mm-hmm. How often do we see her using social media to really ask people these questions? So are they trying to listen? I think they are. The problem is what tools are at their capacity to do. Right.
So, Areti, you have quite a few politicians you have signed up on your side. What's the reaction from them, or the reception, I should say?
Well, these are the guys that are exactly, again, pioneers in using technology. We've been faced, and this is great, but the percentage of those guys is quite small. Trying to put together our communities for our platform, I mean, we were faced with non-existent websites, non-existent emails, and these guys are running for Congress, right? I mean, how do you do that? How do you expect people to trust you if you don't do the basics of really giving them information about what to vote for you for, right? So then this is, again, yes, we've got all these people, but the percentage of the politicians that really are ahead of their game and embrace digital technologies is still quite small. So these are the guys that are winning, really, right? Or at least the guys that, if they have an incumbent that is very, very powerful, really, minimize the difference towards the election day, which some of them have done. Procana, for example.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've tried to do with some of our tools is to translate some of this for members of Congress, because I think that just like Areti and Rani are saying, like we can communicate, we can tweet, we can go on Facebook. We have ways that we're used to communicating, but a lot of these offices are still looking at their letters. Or I've talked to offices that get upwards of 30 faxes a day about key issues. Like this is where they're listening, and so I think that no, it's like very bizarre. But any way that you can sort of translate that, right? So like one of the things we tried to do with the letter tool was to have people write their letter online, click send, and then we have another group that will print them out and mail them as letters. And so I think in the short term, the representatives, the members of Congress are listening, but they're not always listening to the same channels that we're used to communicating in, and we need to do something to massage that. And I'm sure Bart will talk about this, but with Countable, sending along your clicks and your votes, or any way that you communicate these results of these tweet clouds or things like that. I mean, I think one of the things Civic Tech is doing really well right now is being that intermediary that's sort of translating between, there are all these voices in this channel over here, you're used to listening over in this other space, let's try to connect you to and pass some of this along.
Right. Bart, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, let's hope that my connection holds. I appreciate the the shout out there. The short answer is that these guys have no idea what's coming. They're barely staffed for the volume of correspondence that they're getting now, and they really don't have an effective strategy for dealing with an onslaught of electronic communication in the form of the typical congressional office may have one dedicated person responding to email and mail, and then a few interns who help to sort, and so they just can't can't respond to the volume of inbound communication that's coming from so many different means now very effectively, and that's going to be a major challenge for them. Part of our strategy is to help them kind of bucket and achieve some sense of meaning around these issues. So to be able to basically give them a tally of votes up and down from their constituents for a particular piece of legislation going into a vote. That becomes actionable information, and that becomes more useful for them. But that being said, we can only expect that the volume is going to increase, and fundamentally they're going to have to approach it with a new approach. And so, I think that there is kind of a breaking point coming for how, particularly Congress, but also the Senate, deals with just this mad influx of communication, to be able to make sense of it and use it in a meaningful way. But ultimately, if they don't have an easy means of responding to voters and their constituents, they're going to drive a lot of frustration. And that's what we're trying to help to solve. I think everybody in this call basically has a pony in that race. So it's going to be tricky. But all sort of the vitriol aside, we should be trying to help representatives and find ways for them to be able to engage with the constituents more directly.
Okay, thanks, Bart. Well, let's take a few questions from our audience. One is very, I guess, startup-oriented. The questioner notes that what we're doing here really has quite a social impact to it. And it's a question for each of you. Is I'm gathering you're all organized as a typical for-profit Delaware C corporation startup. But they raise a good point. You're not. That's right. Sorry. The rest of you are. But the question is, geez, this sounds like it's something that might be good for a B Corp or maybe even a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. Have you seen the nonprofits or maybe the social or public benefit corporations get into this area at all? Well, of course, Andrew, you are.
Yeah. So we're a nonprofit organization. Yeah.
And the rest of you are C Corps, I take it.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that there have been, B Corps, benefit corporations in California? That really, the concept is that they can act not only for the profit of their shareholders, but also for some other corporate purpose, like a social benefit, which is what all of you are doing here today.
I have seen voter drives and other initiatives in place mm-hmm. that help corporate governance, I think is what you're asking about. And from a corporate governance perspective, there is definitely a drive to do social good. Whether that is in the form of a business, I'm not sure. Inherently, startups fall in two categories. They're the ones that want to change the world and also make a hell of a lot of money. Yeah. And then the second group is, we want to change the world and we just want to do good, which is admirable as well. I've seen quite a few of those get funded lately. But,
it's a good question because there is this growing trend in social impact investing. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing more and more of these B Corps that investors are investing in because they'd rather invest in something that they feel good about as well, like you say, Rani, make some money on it. And they've actually been doing pretty well compared to other types of companies. So I guess the takeaway is this might be an area that's ripe for leveraging this idea of social impact investing. Another question. This is maybe a little bit off topic, but the question for the panelists is, considering all the information that's available now, where would you recommend somebody go to? Because they're going to have to be informed via your sites. So let me ask the question a little different way. Do your sites also maybe inform people about the issues as well as just give them an opportunity to vent?
So for us, this is where all of us come together under one platform. We don't do that at all. We let the people and other companies like Forpia bring the content onto our platform. And again, it has to come from the people. If it comes from the politicians, again, we're going to be another corrupt platform. We offer the technology, not the content. The content has to come from the people to be trusted by people. And up until the point where we really get the politicians to be accountable properly and become our partners rather than, as we said earlier, the them versus us thing. But it cannot come from any kind of source that's been very much directed to write this or the other. So
so that push for reform tool we have is sort of our educational piece, and it's geared specifically towards distilling stances on immigration reform. And so if you want to see if you live in my part of San Francisco and you want to see where Representative Spear stands on immigration reform, you just type in your zip code, it'll pull her up, and it'll have some sort of key things, right? Did she give support for the House bill on immigration reform? Has she supported a pathway to citizenship? Has she spoken out supporting the president in taking executive action? And we have sort of check marks. So we try to, at least for immigration reform now, since it's our central issue, we try to give it as kind of a scorecard format so you can see really simply where does someone fall on this. The other kind of educational piece we do is with the in-person chapter meetings. So when people come to events and people are members, even if they don't necessarily know everything about the issue, they're in that community where there will be a speaker and there will be other members who can sort of talk them through the issue. And I feel like joining that community is another big part in sort of keeping up with everything that's going on.
Okay. I have kind of this might be a dumb question or maybe a random question, but I noticed, I mean, we're all right here in Silicon Valley. You came from London to do this here to the Valley. Your founders are right here. They're very well known here. Is this going to be, I would think that this sort of technology would have grown up in Washington, D.C., but it hasn't. It's right here in Palo Alto. Is this becoming a hub for this, I guess, the center of the civic tech universe here because of the technology capability, or do you think we're going to see pockets in other geographies?
Actually, I'm going to turn that question a little bit on sideways.
Sure.
Silicon Valley inherently creates things. We foster innovation. We applaud it. In fact, we reward it through funding and other mechanisms. Why GovTech and civic tech today is as popular is because we are not insiders. We're not in the beltway, folks. We're not benefiting of 10, 20 years of inside government work. What we're doing today is approaching the problem from the outside. And catalyst change only occurs when you have people that can look at a problem from the opposite side. So do I think personally that these solutions could not have come up in DC? Yeah, I think that this solution that we have today in the companies and some of the other ones I've seen could only happen outside of DC, outside of Sacramento. They could only have done with people with a business mindset that want to create a change for a problem. Mm-hmm. We don't, we have ideas. We don't, government is nothing but status quo. They hate ideas.
Well, and I think, I think just that point that like we're able, I think from out here and from other innovation centers to sort of identify where a real problem is. And I think a lot of these issues, and I can speak kind of specifically for us on immigration reform, the issue is that the people aren't always being listened to, and so the problem to solve is how do we get the people's voice heard in Washington. Right. On immigration reform, we have 3 out of 4 Americans saying they want comprehensive reform. We have, we have all the numbers to support this. We have $37 million lost a day in our economy of potential growth if we had a reasonable immigration system that allowed people to work. And we know all this. We have the support. The problem is that we don't get the response back in Congress. We passed a bill in the Senate a year ago that never gets a vote in the House, which is very disappointing. And so I think that from that perspective, when you see where the problem is, and the problem is that the people aren't being listened to, that's where groups like all of us can step in and say, what are different ways we can do to connect those voices to the people who need to listen?
So I wonder, is there an application in the regulatory function as well? Because we've talked about Congress and the Senate, but for example, I'm a tax lawyer, and I send a lot of letters to senators and congressmen, and I don't ever get responses, of course. And I send a lot of letters to the IRS, and statistically so far, once every 20 years, it makes a difference in how the regulations are drafted, but it's awfully hard to get access to those people. Is that an application you think that might be suitable for the technologies we've described here today?
Countable does that, right? But I mean, you can say vote yes or no to a poll and then to a bill and then send it to your senator, right?
That's right. Where regulation meets legislation, Countable addresses it today. But there's a really interesting feedback loop there that we get to take advantage of, which is that we re-elect our representatives on a regular basis. We don't necessarily have any direct elective power over regulators or department heads within the government or the various levels of government. So you know, what we've seen with like John Oliver's net neutrality push, which led to what, over 1 million submissions or emails to to the government around net neutrality. You know, that's an interesting kind of footnote to where, you know, to I think an idea of how we could start to approach regulatory pressure and bring more pressure. But lacking that direct feedback loop, ultimately we're probably going to have to be putting pressure on our lawmakers in order to drive regulatory change, which is you know, ostensibly how the system should work. We don't necessarily have the best interface for that yet with Countable, where we really focus on a legislative approach and trying to really take legislation and distill it down to whatever issue it is that it's meaningful to voters. There's one extra leap there when you're dealing with regulation or something that's not yet legislation. But we definitely want to get there. But that feedback loop, that accountability process is just harder to brace, as it were.
So for PIA, you can actually do that, Roger. You can leave a message for any decision maker, and we only charge you once an actionable item has occurred. So once they've watched the video, and you get a response back. Mm-hmm. Only at that time do we charge you. Until then, you can vent all you want. We actually have seen change by members who use us. We have members on both sides of the aisle that are accepting video messages, mm-hmm. and you get a response. And one of their promises is that within 2 weeks, they've not only watched your message, but they've given you a feedback. Mm-hmm. And so that was exactly the point. And then further, what I see happening, evolution of the technology that we've created, is that it'll go to any decision maker. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to send it to anybody, and you will know right away when it was watched and what was the action that occurred from it. Mm-hmm. Because that is exactly what people want. Yeah. They want to have, you know, everybody here agrees. They want to be heard, they want to be seen, and they want to know that. And then I get the gratification that I've been looking for, right? You know, just to hashtag, I mean, 4PI has been a part of the Library of Congress since August, mm-hmm. because they recognize how important it is to have what people are saying and what what members of Congress are saying. Mm-hmm. And it didn't occur to the team how the magnitude of something like that. They're like, oh, that's kind of cool, high five ourselves, mm-hmm. and, you know. But what you realize is that you're part of the historical record of the United States of America. All of a sudden, members do take it seriously. That's what I mean. They take it seriously, whether it's immigration reform. I mean, hats off, you've got, out of the people here, at least you and I are both, Areti and I, are both benefit from immigration that happened. I'm from India, raised in Minnesota, and, you know, she should be from Minnesota, but that's okay. Well, democracy has started. But the point is that, you know, you need to access decision makers. And how can you do that on your time as well?
Well, that's good to hear, because certainly, you know, regulation is important. The regulatory agencies have a lot of power. You mentioned, Bart, the FCC and the net neutrality rules, mm-hmm. and just how big an impact that has in the Valley, but there's lots of examples like that. If you're a company creating drones, you're very concerned about the FAA sitting on its hands for a long time over regulations allowing drone technology. So it's good to hear that your technology will allow people to interact with those agencies.
And for us, also, we enable people to chat with all these issues. So hold them accountable through a dialogue rather than one-to-many means of communication that they use nowadays. Mm-hmm. And then also they are able to create groups and coalitions amongst activist groups that fight for this issue. And on top of that, I mean, you may have issues that may not be that common, right? I mean, your tax problem may be something that you cannot find online, you cannot find hashtags for, or whatever. What we're enabling you to do is to create a community around that issue. Now, if you manage to get other groups and do research from the actual app and bring them together, then you organize them yourself under a group chat, and that's it. It doesn't have to apply to what, you know, trends anymore, you know.
Good. Well, with the last few minutes that we have, I want to remind our listeners that this webinar is being recorded. You'll find it on royceuniversity.com and the Royse Law YouTube site. The slides will also be available on Royse University, or you can obtain them by emailing me, rroyce@rroycelaw.com. Before we close, I just want to mention that our next event that we have coming up is on November 12. It is a panel discussion. This time it's live, not a webinar, at the Bay Cafe on the area of ag tech, that's agricultural technologies. I'll be moderating, and we've got 4 industry startup entrepreneurs to discuss that. So you may find that on the events page of our website. Any closing remarks from any of our panelists?
Well, I personally would like to thank you for hosting all of us. This has been really enlightening. I love meeting people who have the same destiny path of starting companies. Hats off to all of you guys. It's not easy, but it's well rewarding when you can see change occur. And it can only happen in America. I'm telling you right now.
All right, well, thank you very much, Rani. And with that, I'd like to thank you, the rest of the panelists, for being here on what's got to be the busiest day of the year for you.
Yeah.
So get out and vote. And thank you, attendees. And the webinar is now concluded.